So Keith Treacy, former professional footballer, and the man on our TVs now when we watch telly for the football games. You're very welcome to the Bulletproof Dad podcast. How are you, sir?
Brilliant. Thanks for having me.
Keith, unfortunately for me, this isn't the first time I met you. I came across you when we were 14 years old in a school match in Malahide Castle, right? And I was playing in defence for Scolisa at the time, and you were playing with O'Connell's.
Okay.
I still remember that day vividly because you absolutely fucking tortured me that day, genuinely. And I still remember to this day. I'm sure you couldn't have the faintest memory of it whatsoever, given what you've gone on to achieve over the years. But just want to put that out there now that for anyone listening to this, when we're talking about Keith's career here, you need to get an idea of how good this lad was, especially when we were kids. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I have vague memories of it, but I played every sport the school had going just to get me out of the classroom. So I would never play them games out of love or, wanting to be there. It was just classroom or football, and obviously football got me out of the classroom. So I was just there to get me out of class, but I don't remember that at all.
But the memory I have is obviously like O'Connell's was always a good team. And Dinny Corcoran, who was on this podcast before, he used to play with you. I remember him taking me aside and trying to give me an idea of what you're all about. And I just remember like the way he was explaining it to me. I was like, I was going to be in for a fucking torture here today. I think you were playing up front and I was centre half. And I can't remember the score. He's definitely beat us. He's beat us well anyway. But it was going back, I'd say under 14s, under 15s, that sort of time frame anyway. And I said it was a tough old day out, and it's still one that I still remember to this day. But again, something I took value from again watching you play over with Ireland over the years, seeing played against this fella. Right. So look, we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But like, what was life growing up for you? Like, you're from Dublin originally, yeah?
Yeah, from the flats in Sherif Street, born and bred in there. Yeah.
Are you the flats that have since been knocked? Or
the ones that were knocked down. The people watched the film. The one where he's sitting there, not letting them get knocked down. I was born and raised in Phil Shanahan House.
Okay.
The 4 set of flats there, they got knocked down, got rehoused in East Wall for a couple of years. Then my mother got pregnant, so we came back to Sherif Street. I think I spent probably 3 or 4 more years, and then I was over in England at 15. But a lot of the time I was down in Ringsend with me nanny and granddad down there. So yeah, Ringsend, Sherif Street, a little bit of
proper dub. So
yeah,
very good. And like, when did football come in for you then? Like growing up, and because it's growing up in the flats around. It's probably a lot of street football when you were younger. But then when did you kind of get involved with a club then?
The earliest memory I have is my dad got me older brother Martin went up to Fairview. There was something in the paper about coming up and trying out for Belvedere type of thing, and I just tagged along. I think my ma basically said, if you're bringing him, bring the other one, and I went along. And although I was underage, the coaches were like, well, don't leave him sitting there, like join in. So I sort of joined in with my brother, and before I knew it, I was playing with older lads and holding my own, and then I would get held back for the next year, then held back for the next year, and I was with my own little mates, and before I knew it, I was a little bit ahead of the curve, and I really started to enjoy it. It just, Belvedere gave me a place where I felt like I belonged, and I had all this energy pent up in me as a boy, and there was obviously, Sherif Street, and you could easily go the wrong way, so to get into sport early doors and just knock that energy I had out of me and be going to bed tired every night was a big plus for me.
And what were your memories like? Because obviously, like, a lot of us would hear about Sherif Street back in the day and the flats and stuff like that. Like, are there generally fond memories and good memories that you have growing up there?
Yeah, well, look, I didn't know any different. I was born in Sherif Street, so a lot of people would say, it's a little bit rough there. But the best memories I have is literally in the flats. There used to be horses and ponies chained to the railings outside. I'd be playing football in between them, kicking the ball in between their legs, running around ponies, and that's literally the memories I have as a child. And little concrete pitches that would pop up here and there, I'd be playing there. So yeah, the memories I have are nice. But I remember, a lot of fires as well, being on lots of trouble. The drug marches as well being big at the time. It was one of them. I was so close to drugs that I sort of thought, drugs will never get me, because I seen the worst of people on drugs in and around the area. So although it wasn't the best environment for me, it did set me up and think, stay away from that stuff.
You had to grow up quite fast, I'd say, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is what I always say to my kids. Academically, I wasn't great, but I had a lot of street smart. I knew how to get along in the street, how to survive. But academically, when I started getting good at football, at 13, Celtic tried to take me across the water. So imagine trying to tell a snotty-nosed little 13-year-old that you need to pay attention in school when you're already being told you're going to be gone in a year, 2 years. So it was difficult. I wasn't a bold child, but it was one that just thought, well, I'm going to England, so let's just ride this out and we'll all get there peacefully. So I would go into school and go to sleep rather than cause trouble.
I get you,
so, Not a bold child, just not interested.
And when did it, like, yeah, you're playing on the streets and stuff, but when you start playing with Belleville, when does it start kind of standing out for you that, look, I'm probably a lot better than most of the players here? Like, when like you're starting to get linked with England and stuff, when does this all start to come to
well, again, the earliest one, I remember playing for the Belvedere team the year older. They would come down and say, oh, can Keith play in this final for us? And I'd be thinking, like, well, I'm not good enough to play at that level. And then I would score a goal. I think I scored against Kevin's one day. It was like a top of the table game, and then the older lads were coming and saying, are you free for next week as well, Keith? And all of a sudden I started thinking, these lads didn't want me here like last week because I'm just a young fella coming up, and then I scored a goal, and then they were asking me to come, and I thought, well, I must be decent if the older lads want me. And then all of a sudden faxes start flying in, that long ago faxes, but I think it was 16 Premier League clubs actually sent the fax and asked me to go on trial. There was 2 up in Scotland, which was obviously Rangers and Celtic. But
you weren't tempted for Rangers?
Not at all. No, not at all. I
don't know how that would have gone down.
Sherif Street, I don't think I'd ever been allowed to go to Rangers. But thankfully, I was in such a place that I could actually say no to Rangers, that I had that many offers that, it wasn't too much of a big deal. But
and you're what, 13 at this stage when all these offers are coming
13,
in?
13,
wow.
14. I mean, I remember the year of doing me junior cert, the people, I don't know the title, but somebody from the government knocked on the door basically and said, Keith is missing too many days in school, he's never here, what's the crack? And it was basically because I was in England on trial every second week. And it was literally just that. So yeah, it was crazy times, but I did pass me junior cert. It wasn't with flying colours, but I managed to pass it, and it was just, I was never there. I was constantly on trial, and it's not something that anybody should ever do with their kids, but that's how it was.
That's just the way it was, yeah. And because we're going back here, like we're about 35, so we're going back here like over 20 years ago. So like the world has changed a lot in that time,
yeah.
So with that going back, like the faxes and stuff that came in, were they going to your parents, or did you have an agent, or who was helping you out at this stage?
They were going to the club.
Quite young, like.
Yeah, they were just going to the club, Belvedere. Yeah. And I'd go training one of the days, and they'd literally whip it out of their bag and go, listen, Arsenal have asked you to go on trial and such a date, and whether it would land well or not, we'd sort of make sure it would. So even if I had skill, it'd be like, now the trials would generally come around when you're not in skill, but there would be the odd one where they're like, we're having a tournament in such and such a place, can Keith come and be part of one of the teams? So it would happen because I wanted it to happen. And again, people would be saying that shouldn't have happened, but I had this burning inside me that I wanted to be a footballer, so I was pushing it. I wanted to be there. No interest in skill whatsoever, and the football was what, I was the child that if I done something wrong, my man that took took football away from me.
Okay, that was your punishment.
That was how to get to me, was football. So I always wanted to be a footballer, and although the situation growing up wasn't ideal, it was what I wanted. Yeah.
Okay. And when you got to, say, go on these trials, because again, you're only a young lad, you're barely even in your teens here, would you have travelled over with other Irish players? Would you have gone on your own? And how did you find, going to these are high pressure games, you're going meeting people from all different countries that you haven't met before, playing with them for the first time, and then there's people standing on the sideline judging you and commenting about you. Like, there's a lot of people wouldn't be able to handle that, especially at that age.
Yeah, well, it was crazy because there was, at 13, there was a Dublin team. So it was all the, the Kennedy Cup and stuff like that. So all the counties would play against each other. So I was in the Kennedy Cup team as a left back.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but there was a lot of Shelbourne players and Crumlin players, Cherry Orchard players that were good, Kevin's players.
These are players you would have played against in your own PDSL league.
There was a lot of rivalry, but then all of a sudden we'd be meeting up as the Dublin team, and then we'd roll into an Irish team, and it would just, you sort of develop these friendships, and then all of a sudden, like Robert Bailey, Simon Madden, Anthony Stokes, Stephen Henderson that played for Belvedere with me, we'd sort of chat to each other and go, well, Aston Villa want to take me on trial, and Hendo would say, well, I'm going in this month, so we'd tic-tac and say, well, I'll go with you. And pretty soon I knew Robert Bailey and Simon Madden were going to Leeds. They had tic-tac, we're going to go to Leeds. So I thought, well, I'll go to Leeds when they're there and see if I like it. Stokes, he was always going to go to Arsenal, so I went to Arsenal, didn't really like it over there. And Blackburn just stuck with me. I went to Blackburn, and nobody really had, within the Irish team or the Dublin setup, nobody was really talking about Blackburn, but I absolutely loved it over there. They took a real interest in wingers. Obviously, Duffer was there at the time, I loved it, absolutely loved it. But it was one of those that nobody in the Irish team was talking about it, but I was thinking, please, somebody bring up Blackburn, because that's where I want to go. But Eddie Nolan turned up. Alan Judge came after a little while. I don't know why Judge was 6 months later coming over than everybody else, but he was. And there was a couple there. There was Tony Kane, a boy from up the north. So you get really friendly, and the Scottish get really close with the Irish as well. So it was great. And I had an English roommate called Frankie Field, and that settled me in really, really quickly as well. So it again, tough times, but no, it was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and just like, so you chose Blackburn in the end, who were a well-established Premier League team, to be fair. Like, of the 16 clubs that were in, like, obviously Celtic and Rangers are big clubs. Rangers wasn't going to be an option, but Celtic could have been massive for you. You mentioned Arsenal there. Was there any kind of the big teams that were also in for you in that 16 at the time? Like,
yeah, well, Arsenal was one of the teams that didn't want me. And
didn't
want me. I went on trial over there and we played against Watford. I think the training grounds are connected, Arsenal's and Watford training grounds. So we played a game. And I genuinely started to feel like I had the flu. I didn't really feel too well. So I went into the physio room with the intention of telling the doctor I don't feel very well and, I can't play the game. But as I was there, Sol Campbell walked in.
Okay.
Somebody, I think it might have been Bergkamp, somebody else walked in and I just basically got really, really nervous. And when I got asked, are you okay, young fella? I sort of, I'm fine. I walked out and played the game. Didn't cover myself in glory. Just got on with it. And at the end of the week, I went to see Liam Brady. And I went into Liam and he said, Keith, be honest with you, a little bit disappointed with you. You're not the player we thought you were. And I said to him, Liam, honestly, I didn't feel well. And he said, well, I'm not having it. You had a week, you didn't play well, off your pop type of thing. And that's fine. I didn't play well. So if he didn't fancy me, he didn't fancy me. But I remember Manchester United, I went on trial over there twice and I didn't like it. I just didn't like it at the club for some reason. It felt like such a big, huge setting that you just get lost in the place. It was so big and everybody was such a big ego, such big people. And I just got the feel from them that this is United, you should be happy to be here.
That was the feel from the club officials as opposed to your players?
Just being in the building. Yeah, it was just being in the building. And they had a lot of Irish at the time, but I just got the feeling that this doesn't feel right for me. And I went on trial twice. I did okay. I came back and they sent another fax to come back on trial and I said no. And Carlos Quiros rang to a house phone.
Rang your gaff in Sherif Street,
In Sherif Street, rang the house and I have a couple of mates who take the piss quite often, so we weren't quite sure if it was Carlos or not. But
someone will have a good Portuguese accent, don't they?
No, we got to the end of it and I had to, my father had to tell him, like, Keith's not interested.
Okay, yeah,
so
wow.
It was a lovely little pat on the back to, you're a decent footballer.
Yeah, massive validation there, yeah.
Again, I had that many offers that it was like, if United's not for you, it's not for you.
Cool. And then what was it at Blackburn that really intrigued you? Obviously, you mentioned I assume you're a big fan of Damien Duff. He's a few years older than you. He's from the same city, plays the same position as you. He's lighting it up at the World Cup around that time as well and playing really well with Blackburn. Like, what was it? Was there anything beyond that, or was it just because you were a big Damien Duff fan?
A little bit of everything. The facilities were unbelievable. The indoor pitch they had, the digs I would be staying in, the house parents, Mick and Mary, the fact that Duffer was there. They had a coach that used to be specifically for wingers. I think his name was Ian Miller, but I might be getting that wrong.
Okay.
It was that
was kind of ahead of its time back then, was it? Like, to have a wingers coach.
He put so much effort into me when I went on trial, and it was all, we're delighted to have you here, Keith. We think we can do something. And it was the total flip of how I felt at Manchester United. I felt like a big fish there, and obviously I wasn't. I was just some little trialist from Dublin, but they made me feel welcome. They made me feel like they wanted me there, and it was out in the sticks. And I for anybody who doesn't know, it's like, I say this all the time, it's like Emmerdale Farm.
Okay,
you cannot get in trouble in Blackburn. And me ma and dad come over to have a look at it, and they basically said, you won't get in trouble over here, so it's sign for Blackburn.
Okay, great. So you're 15 at this stage?
15 when I eventually went.
And what's the feeling then when you go into play? Because are you straight into like a reserve team or an underage team, or how does it work when you first sign then and you're over there full time?
No, you would go into the under 18s, usually in and around the under 18s, but because I was 15 and I'd literally just done my junior cert, I went straight over after I finished my junior cert, straight over. I didn't have clearance from UEFA to be there. I was too young. So the thought from Blackburn was, well, listen, come as soon as you can. If you don't quite settle, you can go back every weekend until you get yourself settled. So sort of a bedding in period. But I took to it like a duck to water, and I say I took to it like a duck to water. I cried myself to sleep nearly every night for 6 months, a year. But I wanted to be there, and I was delighted to be there. And it was really difficult at the start, but because I didn't have UEFA clearance, I remember the under 18s were playing in the Youth Cup, so they were in training that day, and I had nobody to train with, and the first team were training. And it was literally, well, Keith has no one to train with. Let him train with the first team at 15.
Well,
so all of a sudden I'm in there. Graham Souness is taking training, and you're with all these big egos, and you're thinking like, this is unbelievable.
What sort of players would have been in that session, if you remember? Like the ones that stood out for you?
Lucas Neal, I went up against him because we done attack v defence. He was right back. Brad Friedel,
Australia probably at the time as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I really don't know. There was Andy Todd, Lorenzo Amoruso, Two Guy would have been there. Yeah, there was
big
some
men like as well,
big,
not
big
just
boys. It was
not
a
just
physical
footballers.
team.
Like
But yeah, I absolutely loved it. And then after that, I ended up getting me UEFA clearance a couple of months later, whenever it was, and I went straight into the 18s, but didn't really play for the 18s. I was more of a reserve player.
Okay.
And then after that, I got a new contract about a year in. I got another deal, and I was a reserve team player. I got a letter saying you're going to be with reserve/force teams. This is at 16, 17, and then by the age of 17, they ripped up that contract and gave me another contract, and I bought an apartment and a Range Rover at 17.
Range Rover at 17, yeah. That's pretty impressive, all right. So you'd made it technically at this stage, yeah?
In my head, I was well on my way, but yeah, it's it wasn't big and wasn't clever and should never have happened. I didn't even have a license at the time. I had a provisional license.
Okay,
and a Range Rover turned up. So
hate to see the insurance on that thing.
Oh, absolutely ridiculous. But when I bought my apartment and I had no social skills. I didn't even know how to make a bed. The receptionist literally had to come, and we had a boot cleaner called Harry. He would come and he put me curtains up. The girls made me bed. I got a £50,000 signing on bonus. So the two receptionists would drive me around and we'd pick out beds, carpets, stuff to put into the apartment. There was literally, I was a 17-year-old young fella with 50 grand to go and do up a house.
Dangerous.
And I just went to the two receptionists, the only two women I knew over there, saying, "Can you help me, please?" And they did. They were Catherine and Julie. They were absolutely brilliant with me. They were like mother figures, and this is what I mean about Blackburn. I just got the feel of a family, and people would look after me. And look, I went off the rails towards the end of my time at Blackburn, but I was sort of out of the kid team, if you know what I mean. I was in the force team, so I was let off the leash a little bit. But
we will probably end up there in a couple of minutes. But just, you mentioned there, like, you'd moved over, you fulfilled your dream, you'd made it, you have the Range Rover now to prove it. But you did say something there, like you cried yourself to sleep every night. Was that just the homesickness? Was it a lonely thing you had? Like, going over there at such a young age, away from your family, must have been really challenging.
It was really difficult. I have a big family of 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and so my mother and father couldn't come over an awful lot either. So I basically knew I was in it I had a 3-year deal. So I was going to bed for 6 months. We had communal toilets, so I had Frankie Fielding as me roommate. I would wait for him to fall asleep, and then I would just go into the toilets, have a bit of a cry, and I would go back to bed. And I think it was more just a missing family. I was a bit depressed, everything that was going on, but I knew football was coming around in the morning. It was just literally, I have 9 hours here where I'm going to have a little bit of a wobble, but football will come around the next morning and I'll be happy again. Okay. And then it would wind down. You train, do your 2 or 3 sessions during the day. By 6 o'clock, I'd be back in my little room, and that's when I would think, I'm alone. Where's my family? Yeah. That's when it would get me. But in the back of my head, I was thinking, training will be back at 9 in the morning. I'll be back in the building, and football will be on the go again. But quickly moved from something I looked forward to a job, which I'm sure again we'll get to.
Yeah. But I think there's even a stark contrast there. Like, you grow up in like the concrete jungle that is the Sherif Street flats, and then you're in a different country, living on Emmerdale Farm, as you describe it there. Like, that's a lot to get your head around at such a young age as well. Yeah,
I remember, like, one of me, the first night staying in my apartment, I'm listening to cows mooing, like lying in bed, and I can hear cows mooing. I was thinking, like, I'm used to hearing traffic lights or cars going past, and people think, like, that can't be a big thing. It's a big thing to get used to when you're used to the hustle and bustle of a city, to go into a country where, like, you look out your window and it's just dead at night. Like, I'm not used, no street lights.
Stars in the sky.
I'm not used to it. And to be fair, I've come around to that way of life. I know I'm living in Dublin city centre at the minute, but me and my wife do have plans to go rural at some point.
Go for the quiet life,
the quiet life.
Cool. Yeah. But then, so like, we'll pick up where you mentioned there, like, you've established yourself now in the Blackburn squad. You've got 2 new contracts in 2 or 3 years, so that's a huge marker for progress. At what point then do you start breaking into the first team officially? Because, like, those couple of years in football terms, like, there's probably was a big turnaround of managers in that time as well, was there?
Not massive.
Souness was there when you first signed.
Souness was there when I first signed, but he got now, see, I might be wrong because my memory isn't the best, but I'm fairly sure he got the Newcastle job about 2 months into me going.
Okay.
Then Duffer ended up getting the Chelsea move. So Graham Souness has left, one of the big reasons that I gone there. Yeah. Duffer had left.
All in a couple of months of joining.
The coach, right. the winger coach had left as well, because there was a reshuffle when the domino effect from the manager leaving. So all of the reasons for me being there had quickly left, and it was just one of those that, this is football,
welcome
Keith, everybody's. And then you start hearing these phrases like ships in the night, nobody's friends here, and I'm a young footballer trying to establish relationships with people, but the older pros are telling me never get too close to anybody because nobody's your friend here.
Jesus, that's frightening.
It's horrible, because you do realise, and there will be stories that I can tell you when, like, you think you're pally with people, and the next thing you know, the boy you're with is knocking on the door and telling the manager the stuff you're up to, and you think you're always in competition. Although you feel pally with people, it's always a competition. And it was just one of those, open your eyes, Keith, and have a look.
You're thrown right into the melting pot straight away, And then, so what year does it come along then when you start getting into the first team? Because you did have a good year there where you were breaking in and playing regular Premier League football.
Yeah,
for a while,
I had to wait for a while. Like I said, Souness left and Mark Hughes came in, and Mark Hughes played me in a pre-season friendly against Grimsby. I think I was 15 when I first played. So it was a pre-season friendly at Grimsby. Then the following, I didn't play in the Premier League. The following year I got a squad number, which was David Bentley's old squad number. He scored a hat-trick against United as number 29, so they gave it to me, and so I thought, you're the next Bentley type,
right,
daddy, and I was the next Duffer before that, by the way, now the next David Bentley, so it was just getting thrown at me, but I had to wait until Paul Ince got the job. Me and Mark Hughes were really close. I enjoyed working with him. I thought he was excellent, but never trusted me defensively. Wouldn't put me on the pitch defensively. He would put me in cup games, little things here and there, but in terms of Premier League football, never played under him. And the first game of the season under Paul Ince, I played against Everton. We were losing 1-0 with 20 minutes to go in Goodison, and he turned around and said, "Keith, warm up," and we had just signed Keith Andrews. So I assumed, I looked over, I said, he's talking to Keith. He was like, "No, you." And I went to warmed up, and we ended up winning the game 2-1. So I didn't set up any goals. I didn't particularly do anything within the game, but I come on and Goodison wanted to really intimidating with the
Everyone
fans.
Everyone says about Goodison being one of their favourite grounds to play in.
Love it, just because the fans are so close.
Yeah.
And you love it, like it's really intimidating, but I was one of those that I loved that sort of pressure. I loved the build up. I loved the fans. I always thought I'd prove you wrong when people are roaring at me. So I absolutely loved it.
And you get a lot of it on the wing, to be fair. Like,
a lot,
you know where to hide. With that, like, what age bracket are you there doing? Getting your official?
I think by now I'm probably 19. Yeah,
so you're still in the teens here. Like, there's a lot going on. Like, wow. And then from there, like, the rest of the season goes okay for you. You get a few more games from then.
Yeah, we do okay, but Paul Ince gets the sack at Christmas, in around Christmas time. So I'm in the team. I've started 1 or 2 games. I'm playing quite regularly, coming off the bench. And then we lose to Wigan, I think 5-3 at Wigan. And we have a Christmas party in Dublin straight after the game. So we lose 5-3. Paul Ince is going mental in the dressing room after. And literally the lads are looking at the watch thinking, we've a flight at 7 here. Like, so we're all sitting there thinking, what's going to happen here? He eventually goes, lads, I've ran yous, I've bollocked yous, I've everything. Just go and get pissed. Go and get pissed, see what happens. So we went, everybody wacky races to Manchester Airport, got to Dublin, turned the phones back on in Dublin. Paul Ince has been sacked as Blackburn manager. Well, so it was literally that quick of a turnaround.
Jesus Christ, it's ruthless, isn't it?
And we're running around as Shrek and Batman and all, like in Dublin. Were
you party liaison officer being the local
You
club?
would think so, wouldn't you? It was Robbie Fowler. Robbie Fowler party liaison. That's what we called him. Yeah, never played any football for us, but organised all the parties.
Most important job of the lot.
Yeah. Now we've another legend. Like when Robbie walked into Blackburn, I remember just looking at him and thinking, this is Robbie Fowler. Like, what is going on here? And absolute legend, gentleman as well.
Were there some senior players that would have looked after you in those early days? Because there would have been some. You mentioned some big professionals there, like at Blackburn. Was there any in particular who would have looked out for you?
Not at the early days, not really. But I sort of attached myself to the ones that were, this was still the back end of the drinking culture, and the ones I would latch on to were the drinkers or were. And again, this is not. I don't want to criticise the older pros, because the likes of Dominic Matteo and David Flickroft, they were at the end of their career. They were finishing. They were coming down the hill. I was on the way up, and I should have recognised that. I latched on to the wrong people, and nobody made me go out and have all these drinks. But I just latched on, and there was 1 or 2. Like, I remember Brad Friedel tried to have a word with me once or twice. He was a really good pro. Martin Gams Pedersen, another left winger, who tried to have a little word with me here and there. Keith Andrews as well. But I always now, in hindsight, with the addictions I've had, I think if somebody doesn't want help, you can't help them. And at that time, I didn't think anything was wrong, so I wasn't looking for help. Although older pros could see the road I was going to head down, I couldn't see it for myself, and I didn't see any danger, so I had no interest in helping.
At that stage, though, you've established yourself in the first team, like everything's going well. So there's probably, I'm sure there's a voice in your head telling you, like, these people are wrong. Like, look, and you had the results to back it up of what you were doing.
Well, it's very easy when you're looking at yourself in the mirror. It's very easy to lie to yourself when you're on a couple of thousand a week and you're looking in the mirror and you know your drink is going out of control and you should be a little bit more professional. It's very easy to lie and think, but I'm in consideration for the Irish team. I'm on the bench in the Premier League at 19 and 20. I have a Range Rover. I have a house already. I'm getting paid more money than my father. It's all
like,
these things come in.
Like that's a hard thing to get your head around as well when you're that young. You know, to be getting such a big salary in comparison to what maybe your own family.
And again,
used
this is not a dig at any member of my family, but I didn't have anybody there with me. I was literally over there by myself. And when I moved out and got my apartment, I was off that leash a little bit at Blackburn, whereas they didn't see me as much. They didn't have as much control over me. So I was just away with the fairness.
And what would a standard week look like? Because obviously, like going out and having a few points after a game and stuff, or maybe if you didn't have, you know, you hadn't had a game for another 2 or 3 days or 4 days, depending on the way the Premier League was falling. Like that's kind of would have, especially 20 years ago, would have still been quite normal, you know?
Yeah.
Like had you got kind of set rules of like maybe 2 days before a game or 1 day before a game you wouldn't drink, or how did that kind of set up for yourself?
Well, early doors, it would be on a Friday I'd never drink because it was just the way it was. You don't drink the day before the game. Everything else was sort of if you want. And for a long time, like I said, I played in the first team at 15, but then didn't make my Premier League debut until 19. So for those 4 years, I'm sort of in limbo at the reserves and first team. So I would travel for the reserves and play 90 minutes, and then they say, Keith, you need to be on the bench for the first team. Oh, you didn't play today, Keith, so you're back in the reserve team now. Okay. So I'd be in limbo all the time. But when you're in limbo like that and you're playing games, you play a reserve game, then you're on the bench for the first team. You don't play. You go out after the game with the first team. You play the game for the reserves, you go out after the game with the reserves because the next day is the day off. Yeah. So I ended up not training an awful lot and just playing games because I'm in that limbo stage. So I would play 2, maybe 3 games a week. And when I say play, I'd be involved in squads 2 or 3 times a week. And I would end up on the piss 3 or 3 nights a week. And then I'd have days off where I'd go again. And you're in that limbo where you're getting away with it because you're not actually physically doing that much running because, like I say, you're in between the 2 squads.
I get you. So you weren't like trying to drag yourself up to go to train at whatever 9 or 10 a.m. the next morning. You were kind of okay with that.
Yeah, well, if I played with the reserves, I'd have the day off the next day. Right. So I'd go out Tuesday night, do what I like. Wednesday, I wouldn't have to report.
But most of the players at that stage probably do the same. Obviously, because that was just the normal culture, you know. So
look, don't get me wrong. There was a couple of lads that would be teetotal, wouldn't do it. But a lot of the Scottish, a lot of the Irish, a lot of the Welsh, some of the English would stick together and just go mental on the weekends and have a few gargles. And it became a constant in my life. You win or lose, you're on the booze. That's one of the sayings that ends up coming around. And I found it very difficult. Like I say, when I bought my house, I ended up later on in life, I ended up buying a bigger house. And you're in a stadium with 30,000, 40,000 people screaming your name, and then all of a sudden, within an hour, I'm sitting in an empty house and you can hear the pin drop. Yeah, it's like so high to so low in an hour that my body just thought all these thoughts would come in and noise in my head, and I thought I'd have to go for a pint, and I'd just be out there. And it became a constant then. I was like, well, I can't sleep after games because of all the energy drinks and the adrenaline. So the only way to knock this out of me is go for a few points.
Can't calm yourself
But again, it's that voice in your head trying to rationalise things, saying, we're going for the point because you only need a drink so you can go for the sleep. And before you know, it's 6 a.m. and you're absolutely
right. So it starts off maybe an innocent point, just going down to the local beer, but then it just escalates from there. Yeah. Yeah, look, we've all been there, to be honest. So.
Mine was about a 12-year period of that. So.
Well, look, you were like, I suppose you had the finances to back it up, and as you said,
that's
like,
the dangerous
it's
thing.
Perfect storm, really, when you think about it. Just sending a kid, plucking him out of like a working class area of Dublin, throwing him over to somewhere he's never been to before, give him no support, and give him all this money and all this attention. Like
and like you say,
it's crazy that this was only 20 years ago in a way. And you think back, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you asked me about
it wouldn't happen now.
My normal working day at Blackburn. I had to be in the building at 10. Training would be at 10:30. We'd be finished by 12 o'clock. On my worst day, there would be a gym session at 1 o'clock after lunch, and you'd be finished by 2. On a normal day, I'll be back in my house by 12:15, 12:30.
That's there's a long stretch there to fill.
And like you say, with all that money in your pocket, Range Rover outside, what are you going to do? It's like a perfect storm to go and get yourself into trouble.
Did you consider yourself having obviously your teammates, and you just mentioned there how ruthless football is, people come and go very, very quickly. Could you find yourself establishing any real friendships, or were you always kind of looking back forward to getting back over to Dublin to your friends you grew up with? Like, was there a big difference between the friends you made over in the UK just through the football versus the ones that you would have had back home? Like, did it always feel very different between both?
Yeah, well, to be fair, like I was over in England for 13 years, and I don't keep in contact with anybody.
Nobody at all?
I think there's two people, like I say, I don't have a phone, but the two people that I might text on the regular off my wife's phone would be Sean Dyche and Ross Wallace.
Okay,
And that's after a 13-year career.
Wow.
And literally, me and Ross became friends because we played for Preston together, and then when he left for Burnley 6 months later, I left for Burnley.
Yeah.
And being Scottish and Irish, him being an ex-Celtic player, I was really fascinated by him and wanted to learn off him, great left foot. And we ended up living in the same area. He got me the same financial advisor. So Ross was really, really good to me because he was a little bit older than me. He knew I was a little bit off the wall and I loved to drink. He used to bring me in. When I bought a house in Lytham next to him, he used to drive me into Burnley every day, and it was over an hour drive into Burnley.
Right, okay, yeah.
So me and Ross got really, really close. He was supposed to be best man at my wedding as well, but for one reason or another, that didn't happen. But yeah, probably very, very few relationships in England. But
wow, yeah, that's it. Just for someone, you're surrounded by people all the time,
Yeah.
so many people every single day, like to have that as a kind of take home just probably gives you just reinforces the nature of the beast.
ships
Really,
in the night.
yeah.
That's all you are, ships
Crazy.
in the night.
So we've just kind of covered Blackburn there and what you've done, the players you've been with. You've established yourself now as a Premier League player. What was the next step? I know you did go out on loan at one stage to Sheffield United. Yeah, can you tell us how that came about?
We were on a pre-season tour of Austria with Sam Allardyce, and Jordan.
He's the Blackburn manager at this time.
He's the Blackburn manager at the time, yeah. And I haven't played any Premier League football, but I'm getting close. And Stephen Warnock is the left back at the time. And while we're in Austria, Stephen Warnock takes me into his room and he basically says, "Keith, I think you have a chance of playing this year. You know, you've got closer to Morton. Your end product has got better defensively. You're a little bit better. Go and knock on his door, tell him you want to play." So I'm speaking to Allardyce thinking I'm getting closer. Some of the 11v11 games, I'm the starting winger. There's every chance I might get something. So during the week that we're in Austria, there's a psychiatrist there. Nobody wants to talk to the psychiatrist because the psychiatrist is Sam Allardyce is me. So wherever you relay to him is going to go to Allardyce. So you can't criticise the club when the manager's going to be told.
Were you told
about
to have meetings with this guy, or was like he's there if you want to chat to him, or what was the
Initially,
context of him being
it was there if you want them, lads.
Okay.
But nobody was using them. So me being one of the youngest players there, Allardyce has a meeting. Lads, nobody's using him. You know, he's here to be used. Gets kicked down the line. Keith, you go and have a chat with him. So I have a chat with him, and basically, I spoke to him for over an hour. He used to work with golf players and all, so he's trying to tap into my mind. And basically, I say, I think it's a bit. Martin only plays ahead of me because he has a long throw. And, you know, he's a bit better than me defensively, but I think I should be in the team. Basically, told him my thoughts of a young ego.
This is just your own opinion.
Yeah, just my opinion, my egotistical young fella thinking I'm better than Martin Gams-Pedersen, an absolute legend in the Premier League. But I was trying to get
baller, to be fair to him,
brilliant footballer. But I was trying to get myself ahead of him. So I'm better than him. I'm this and I'm that. Couldn't see it. But eventually, I unload all this thing on the psychiatrist. We get back to Manchester. 2 or 3 days later after the pre-season tour is finished, and Allardyce goes so cold, really, really cold, pulls me into the office. "You're going on loan to Sheffield United." I was like, "But I'm the number 2 left winger here."
Yeah.
Like, and he said, "Well, look, you won't be playing, you know, you need to go." And I basically said, "Well, I want to stay and fight for my place.
Yeah.
I'm 19, 20, I'm on the bench in the Premier League, I'm happy where I am." No, well, Blackwell's a mate of mine and you'll be going, da-da-da-da-da. So
it was decided for you, no matter what.
You were gone, yeah. So, but even then, I started acting the Billy Goat. So they sent me to Sheffield to go and pick out an apartment. They brought a PA with me. So the PA fella called Matt. We're driving around Sheffield looking at apartments. Every apartment I see him, nah, don't like it. Because I wanted to mess this up. I wanted to stay at Blackburn. So I'm being a total.
Because you're going down to these in the Championship at the time.
Oh yeah, but that wasn't like I wasn't thinking I'm too good for Sheffield United. It was just I think I'm in a decent place at Blackburn. Like I want to stay where I am. So we're going looking at apartments. I'm saying not good enough. Don't want it. Nah. So we see this house that it's unbelievable. It has a pool out the back, a heated pool out the back, a jacuzzi. It has a bridge over it with koi carp in the middle. Like when I rented the house, I had to have a meeting with the estate agent to tell me that every fish in the pond was worth $5,000, and if one of them dies, it's on me during the rent. So I was like, I want this, and they're saying no, it's on the market for $2 million or something. So they get back and they say, oh well, the fella's living in the south of France, he'll rent it to you for $2,500 a month for the 6 months you're at Sheffield United. So I was like, that'll do, and they're like, no. But eventually Sheffield United agreed that they would give me an allowance of $2,000 a month. So I had to pay £500 to stay in this house for 6 months. And
wow.
You can imagine it. But again, I was just trying to, want that house, thinking they'd go, this fella's more hassle than what he's worth. But I ended up getting it. No, I ended up getting it.
Yeah.
Mental.
And again, you're not even 20 here, yeah?
Probably, yeah, 19, just turning 20, and I started. Look, we played in my first game in the championship. We did really well. I think it was Middlesbrough away. I started and did okay. Felt comfortable at that level. Met Gary Speed again, another Premier League legend. And
was he playing with them at the time, or was
he was a player coach at the time?
Was he? Yeah.
His back was a little bit knackered, but he would play if he joined in the training quite a lot. And he was an absolute legend. Very short time I had on, but the little nuggets of how to play football and the dark arts of how to go about things was unbelievable. And when I first got to Sheffield, again, I was a kid, very, very socially awkward, but he comes out into the car park, brings me in, shows me where to get me toast in the morning. This is the dartboard. That's where you get your boots.
Establishes him.
The whole time I'm looking, thinking, this is Gary Speed. Yeah. This is an absolute legend, like a Premier League legend, and he's showing me around. And that's just what he was like. He had absolutely no ego about himself, and nobody ever had a bad word to say about him.
Wow, yeah, that's incredible. So you get established you're playing regular football now in the Championship with Sheffield United. So this is your first proper run hitting the season run as a full-time player. But you don't stay the full year there, do you? You go back to Blackburn then, do you?
Yeah, was it a
6-month loan you did?
I ended up doing 6 months, but it was a 12-month loan. It was a season-long loan, but after 6 months around Christmas time, it got terminated. The reason for that was I played 17 games. I think it was the 17 games of the season. I played them all. I scored a couple of goals. I had a couple of assists, looking really good. But as you say, I've only really played in the reserves level at Blackburn. But this is the Championship, Saturday, Tuesday, hell for leather, 100%.
Relentless, yeah.
You know, at Sheffield United, it's like working class, million miles an hour press. So I'm doing that. Started to take its toll on me after a couple of games, and I'm drinking quite heavily at this time as well. So towards the 15th, 16th, 17th game, I started to tail off a little bit, not quite as energetic. So I get a lower back injury. We're playing Plymouth away on the Saturday, and we're on the pitch on the Friday. Kevin Blackwell pulls me. We're not going to bother bringing you to Plymouth, Keith. Your back is, still iffy. So
it's a big spin as well.
I think it was about 6 hours on the coach. Or they were like, you don't need that. And we had a game at home on the Tuesday. So Kevin Blackwell pulls me. You're not going to travel with us, but you're going to play on Tuesday. No problem. So then Sam Ellis, the assistant manager, says, anybody who's not playing tomorrow on this line for a running session. And I'm thinking, well, he can't mean me because I'm not playing because my back is not 100% right. So surely you don't want to flog me because I might get injured. Sam Ellis didn't say it like that. Okay. And I didn't put it quite as nicely as that either. But he said on the line, I said no. He said, get on the line now. I said no. He said, well, get your boots and piss off. And I got me boots and pissed off.
Cool. I'm sure there's a few words left out there.
There are a couple of words left out, but
you have to question the logic there. You're not fit enough to sit in a bus, but yet you're being drafted in to do sprints up and down a line. It's definitely a bit daft, to be fair.
But coming from a 19-year-old who's barely played 17 games in a career, there's not an awful lot of games. I probably just should have just shut up and did what I was told to do. And at that age, I just thought,
maybe I don't know. Hindsight's great. Maybe you could have handled it better, but I think it's very hard to see sense in the logic there, being honest with you.
Well, that's what I was
credit to a young lad having the, I suppose, the backbone to stand up is probably another way of looking at it. Stand up for himself. No, this isn't right.
Well, it didn't feel too good the next day when I was in Blackburn.
Well, I was going to ask, did you just have to go back straight back with your tail between your legs, or how does it work?
Well, literally, looking back at it, I think Sam Ellis, it was more of a throwaway comment, get your boots and piss off. I went literally into the boot room, got my boots, put them in a bag, got in my car and drove home.
Right, okay.
And had no contact with anybody else.
Who was feeding the fish while you were gone?
God knows. But I went back to Blackburn the next morning. I went into the training ground, sitting having me breakfast, and Allardyce walked past, and he literally double took me and went, "What are you doing here?" And we went into his office. I told him what had happened, and he's just shaking his head like, "Jesus Christ, son!" And that was it. It was terminated. My loan was finished. Yeah. And I started back at Blackburn.
And did he let you back into the team? Was it kind of like just come back and start training?
Yeah, we said come back in and train, because the loan for the 6 months had actually gone quite well, even though it finished quite poorly. It had gone quite well. So he said, yeah, come back in and train. And again, it was in around Christmas time, and I think Boxing Day, I crashed my car on the way to training. We were supposed to train in Ewood rather than the training ground because the training ground was frozen and the stadium had underground under soil heating. Yeah. So we get a message, go to Ewood. I'm driving to Ewood again without my licence, only a provisional licence. Crashed my car. Police get called. The police end up dropping me to Ewood, and by the time I get there, the lads are on the pitch starting to do the training. I go into the dressing room, put my boots on. The doctor walks in and says, "You're sacked. The police have rang, told us you've been in a crash. The manager's aware you don't have a licence, and he doesn't want to talk to you.
And you were sacked.
Sacked is the word he used.
Okay, yeah.
I flew home to Dublin later that day, and my agent rang me and said, listen, we've been through your contract. I spoke to Sam. Basically, they can't sack you for what you've done.
Okay, yeah.
But he doesn't want you, so just stay in Dublin.
Wow,
so
okay, yeah.
They continued to pay me while I was in Dublin, and this was Boxing Day, so this was going into the January transfer window anyway.
Yeah.
So I stayed in Dublin until the last day of January, and then eventually got a move to Preston.
Jesus, can you remember that month? Being
Not
Premier
really.
League?
I was fairly drunk for the whole month.
What was between, like, obviously that month of January, but like what was like the summers in between when you were off for a few weeks? Was it always back to Dublin to see mates, or what was? Yeah,
like
just knocking around Dublin City, going to pubs, or what was kind of the scene?
That was it. Yeah, just pissed for 2 months, and like my friends couldn't understand it. Even people in England, like me mates or Ross or whoever I talked to in England, they'd be saying, "We're going to go to Dubai with the family for 2 months, Marbella." I'm going to Dublin. That's all I did. I just went here 2 months, got pissed every single day, and then I go back with a big belly on me, and then I couldn't understand why I couldn't compete in the running like everybody else. It was ridiculous, but I always thought pre-seasons to get yourself fit.
Okay, yeah.
I took that as I'll enjoy it and I'll lose it then. But
I'm sure your friends took massive value of their being mates with this Premier League fucking superstar, coming back, and they all want to go out and see you, like they all want a piece of you. And I'm sure like they all delighted to be in your company and stuff like that. Like, did you thrive off that, or like was it just catching up with your friends? Like, what was it?
For me, it was just catching up with me mates. It was going out having a few points, and
which is perfectly normal for a lad in his early 20s, 20 years ago. That was like, it wasn't really. There's no real alarm behaviour there, really, is there? Or was it a bit more than just?
It was every day.
Right,
like I say, I was here for 2 months, and I say I was out on a drink every day. People take that as a sort of throwaway comment. I mean, every single day.
Okay,
Monday, I'm not saying I go and have 3 points in a pub and then I go home and go to sleep. I'm talking 12 points, whiskey at the end of the night, Sambuca, the whole shebang.
Right, okay.
Next morning up, do it all again. Next morning again. So total abuse of my body for 2 months. And then for pre-season, I'd probably stay on the straight and narrow for 3 or 4 weeks. When I start to see my body starting to get back to what it needs to be, then I go, right, I broke the back of it back on the gargle. So it wouldn't be an everyday thing in England, towards the end it became an everyday thing. So yeah, like I found it as coming back and having a few points with my mates, but I wasn't, your normal young fella. I needed to be a little bit more professional, and I was playing in the best league in the world. I should have been more professional, but I seen it as, well, I'm over in England 8, 9 months, 10 months out of the year. This is the only time I get off. I want to enjoy it.
Yeah. Because it's like, it's not, you're probably seeing like that was, it's an amazing opportunity you have, but you are missing out on certain kind of rites of passage, if you like that. Like you're probably seeing some of your close friends who are living a normal Dublin life, So I'm sure there's a natural thing to want to compensate a little bit there anyway. Going back to what you're talking about there, you've just been signed by Preston then. Who signed you Preston?
Darren Ferguson.
Right, so Sir Alex's son, who's been around a long time, to be fair himself. Like he's forged his own career. How did that come about? And like, was that a good move for you? The fact like you're going back into Championship, weren't you?
Yeah, back into the Championship. It was a good move. I wasn't really too sure what I was getting when he rang. Obviously, I knew who he was. I didn't know too much about Preston at the time. But Eddie Nolan, the boy from Waterford who came to Blackburn, he had ended up at Preston at this time as well. He has left Blackburn and gone to Preston. So I knew he was there. And yeah, when I eventually got the phone call off him, I wasn't too sure, but nobody knew why I was in Dublin. Nobody knew that Blackburn had told me to basically piss off. I told my mother and my father that my hamstring is, I've tear in my hamstring.
Okay, yeah. No one knew about the car incident.
No, everybody thought I was injured. So I thought to myself, I need to get a club here. And when Preston came along, I flew back. And I done my medical in Deepdale, and I failed my medical. The morning of the transfer window was closing at 5 o'clock that day. I went and done my medical in around 12. They weren't happy with it, so I had to go to Manchester to a hospital to get an MRI scan on my back. They had a look at it and they basically said, look, we can't put this sort of... I think it was a 4-year deal on better money than I was actually at Blackburn.
Okay.
So I'm sitting in Fergie's office waiting for my contract to come in to be signed after I've done my medical. They come in at about 20 to 5. I'm looking at my agent. They're saying, look, it basically Keith, you failed your medical.
Had you a disc issue or what was it?
I had a disc issue in my back,
Were you aware of it? Were you aware you had it?
It happened very early at Blackburn. Really, really early at Blackburn. But they told me that it was a disc issue and it was sore. It was pressing on a nerve and something else. But it sort of just went away by itself as well. Like I got a little bit of treatment, then got up one day and it was all right. So you're back at that age, they're very nervous to do things because all sorts of insurance reasons at that age with a young boy. So when I went away at Blackburn, they were just happy with it. But when I failed the medical, they had a look at it and said, listen, we can't give you this amount of money. We can't financially back you because you've only played 25 first team games at this time. So you haven't proven you can do it. Your body might break down. So there's a 2-year deal on in and around the same money as Blackburn. You have 15 minutes to make up your mind.
So it's last 50 minutes of the window.
Last 15 minutes of the transfer window. And again, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, no, I can't go back to Dublin. Because nobody knows why I'm really here.
If you said no, is there a way of getting an offer like in a month's time? Are you out of contract? Could you potentially get something?
Well, see, I wasn't out of contract. I'm still under contract at Blackburn.
Right.
They don't want me. They don't want me in the building, but I'm still technically under contract. So I could have went back to Dublin and just kept getting paid and kept getting pissed. And I thought for a time I was thinking, cheeky bastards, I'm going to get pissed for the next 6 months. But in hindsight, I was realised this isn't a good thing. I need to move. So I just swallowed my pride and took the deal.
Okay. And how did that go? Like, what's your attitude going in then to a club? Because obviously that's happened to you. You're probably going in with a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth when you're starting off, given what's just happened there with that. Like, how did you find going in and playing for Darren Ferguson then, if that's just happened as you've signed them?
I didn't take it too personally.
You're okay. You understood the logic, like, did you?
I understood it. I wasn't happy about it, but I sort of just took it on the chin and thought, like, this is a new club. Let's not start on a bad footing. But yeah, I remember I scored a couple of goals, maybe an important goal that season, and I always felt comfortable in that level because I played at Sheffield United a handful of games in the Championship. I felt okay. And Ross Wallace was playing ahead of me at the time at Preston, and there was a fella called Chris Sedgwick. We used to call him the crazy horse on the wing. But he was a really, really good footballer, believe it or not. So them two were there. I was learning off them two, and all of a sudden, Ross would come off. I'd get 20 minutes here or there. That would start to blood me into the Preston team. I scored an important goal, and then Ross left. He went to Burnley, so I was the number one left winger. So I had about 18 months at Preston, and it was a really, really good time for me. Darren Ferguson got sacked. Phil Brown came in. And I became probably the most important player in the relegation battles, but my drinking was absolutely gone from, I don't want to say strength to strength, that makes it sound like a good thing, but it was getting heavier and heavier and heavier because this was a studenty city.
Okay, and you were back into city life,
I'd have been 20, 21 at the time, and, right up my street to be in around freshers and all that stuff. So my drinking was going off the charts, but my performances for Preston were getting better and better. I scored 11 goals in the Championship. I think I had 9 assists as well. I was getting into the Irish team. So again, it's very hard to look myself in the mirror and go, you need to get a hold of yourself.
Yeah, when everything is technically on paper going in the right direction. Were your managers aware of it? Like, were they aware of the drinking that was going on? Like, or were they happy enough to fight? Like, it's probably a bigger question here. Like, what's a manager's responsibilities if they're just looking for performance on the pitch, and once that's okay, just leave them at it, do what you want, or are they more like? I'm sure there's a lot more staff and clubs, I feel, these days to deal with this sort of thing, but back then it probably wasn't,
Yeah, well, it's difficult because I've had different managers that had different approaches. Like Phil Brown basically didn't care. He did not care, and he said to me, as long as you play well on a Saturday and a Tuesday, I don't give a shite what you do. And this was at a time where I'd be going into nightclubs during the week, and Facebook, social media was starting to get going. So people would be sending stuff into the club saying, your left winger was here till 2:30 this morning drinking vodka, and he would say it to me like, you better fucking play well on the weekend.
Okay.
And he would just mark me card, and I sort of liked it because it was old school. It was all I have to do is play well. Training doesn't really matter. Just play well, play well. And then I had the likes of Eddie Howe, who tried to get me to go down to Tony Adams as a rehab clinic down the south of England. It's called Sport and Chance. Yeah. So he tried to get me to go down to there.
Did you
go? No, but again, at the time I thought, I don't have a problem. Like, what's going on here? I didn't want help. So he offered me that. I thought, how dare you assume I have something wrong with me? I'm fine. I'm just a normal young. Has a couple of points here and there. But again, I wasn't ready for help. And Sean Dyche took a different approach where he would come and grab me. I would train. He would be on me 24/7. But then after training, he'd go on a little run with me through the city. And I'd have a little chat with him. I'd start confiding in him about me drinking, what's going on at home, and everything that was in my head.
He just took you out of the whole. This is now obviously when you're at Burnley. He just took you off on his own.
Yeah.
On it every day. He'd take you off for a run, yeah?
Yeah, nearly every day, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but when Dyche first came in, Eddie Howe left, he went back to Bournemouth, and Dyche came in. I had a 6-week fine waiting on me because I went to my uncle David Cassidy's wedding, and I came back. Eddie Howe breathalyzed me on the Monday morning, and I failed the breathalyzer.
Was that just something he did for you, or was that a standard?
Just for me, yeah. He
Okay,
asked
right.
me about 6 weeks prior to that. He said to me, I used to always catch him. I'd be having me dinner in the canteen, and he'd be like looking around the walls at me having me dinner. And I always thought, he's a weirdo, this boy. But he pulled me one day. Keith come into the office, and he like, Keith, I'm not being looking at like what you're eating around the place, what you're drinking. Your diet's absolutely fine, son. Have you got a belly on you? And whatever. He said, look, I think it's alcohol. I think it has to be alcohol. Would you mind if I breathalyze you for the next couple of mornings and just so we can eradicate it? I obviously said no straight away. And, well, have you got a problem? And I sort of got backed into a corner where I had to accept it.
Yeah.
So he did breathalyze me. And for a couple of weeks, I was fine. I boxed clever. I only ever went out when I had the day off. And then we played Millwall away. We got a really good, I think maybe we beat them or a last minute draw. It was one of them. We felt like we won the game. Can't remember if we actually did. But I told him I'm going to Dublin for me uncle's wedding after the game. And he was like, yeah, no problem. Gave me a little wink. Go and enjoy yourself, son. So I thought it'd be a little bit lenient here Monday morning.
The license, yeah.
Monday morning came, breathalyzer came out, and I failed the breathalyzer. And that was literally that was pretty much the end of me and Eddie Howe's relationship as well. I think he was at the club then for another 3 months. And the relationship totally broke down. But he tried to find me 6 weeks' wages, which when Sean Dyche came in the crossover, decided to squash it.
Okay,
so
yeah.
We got off on a really good foot.
Yeah, because they say, like, it's a weird one, like, because I think of you as an attacking winger that likes to take on players and beat them. So, like, looking at manager styles of play, like, you think, like, you and Eddie Howe will be a match made in heaven for that sort of football style of play. Whereas, like, with Sean Dyche, and you mentioned there about Sam Allardyce, people like that, like that's, if I'm an attacking winger that wants to go at people, they're probably not the managers that are going to get the best out of me in the football side of things. But Sean Dyche, obviously, he's a really, I don't know him personally, but he's a really likeable man. Like, every press conference he does, he just seems, there's something authentic about him I really like. Eddie Howe probably doesn't have the same persona, but yeah, an amazing manager, what he's doing at the moment as well. What was it that Dyche obviously saw something in you, did he? Like, he obviously felt you needed a bit more attention or care than everybody else if he was to just take you out on a run most days. Like, that's pretty special, isn't it?
He became like a father figure to me, and I've said this, like, if I hadn't met Sean Dyche in my career, I'd have probably just drank myself to death. He really did get me to a point where I wanted to try and give him everything I could. And the year we got promoted, I played 38 games for him, and I didn't give him everything because I was still drinking really, really heavily, but I was trying and I was fighting for him, and there was something I couldn't totally commit myself to the football because the drink had such a heavy hold on me. But we got really, really close. And even when we speak now, he always says to me, we got so close, son. But again, he will always reference the point that I could have been dead now. So I can sit here, and for my own mental health, I try not to, but I can sit here and think I should have done more. I could have been one of the best wingers Ireland's ever seen. I could have played 100 times. I could have secured me kids' financial futures. But at the end of the day, it was a question of life and death. And thankfully, I managed to just get myself out of it and get myself sorted. So you can, the spin that Dyche puts on it is amazing. And as a man manager, he's unbelievable. He used to just bring me out every day. We'd finish training. He's like, come on, Keith. And we'd run through Burnley City Centre. There'd be cars beeping at us. Because he's very recognisable with the ginger goatee. But he was brilliant. And he became a father figure. I would tell him most things. And I remember my father became unwell in Dublin, and I just, went into his office one day and told him and started crying and literally just hugged me and, it's going to be okay. If you need to go, you can go. Anytime there's anything like this, son, you can go. And he cared about the human being. Yeah. And, that's such a basic thing to say, but a lot of managers don't.
No.
They cared about the footballer.
Yeah. And it's like, you can see why when you talk about, you've used this phrase, ships in the night, you can see how high pressurized the whole situation is, that if you are a manager and there's so much scrutiny and like you're only 2 or 3 defeats in a row away from the sack, you mightn't have the headspace or the capacity to have that sort of time, so you can see where it comes from both sides, You mentioned there, like, a couple of, like, managers obviously have different approaches, which you mentioned the Phil Brown approach that was like, just do what you have to do, just make sure you produce. And that obviously had, because you did play well at that time. Then you had probably a bit more of a sterner approach from Eddie Howe, who's breathalyzing you every single week, which is a completely different direction to go. And then you have Dyche there, who's kind of putting the arm around the shoulder. Like, of the three, they're 3 very different approaches. None of them really, as Dyche said, really got to where the effect that they really wanted. But was Dyche the closest with that arm around the shoulder? Was that definitely what got you playing your best football, do you think? Yeah,
Dyche was definitely, but Dyche was the one that definitely got me to the closest. But the drink was just, it was too heavy. I couldn't knock it on the head. But he was the one that like I said things to Eddie how I'm doing this or I'm doing that. It was all boxing clever. I was still mental, but with Eddie, with Sean Dyche, it was genuine. I'm trying here. I'm trying my best for you, but I just couldn't do it. He was the one who got the best out of me. But saying that, I think I played my best football at Preston, but that was just sort of off the cuff, and I was very little coaching in terms of when I have the ball.
Yeah.
Keith come back, and it was again a perfect storm because Callum Davison would play left back, and he was an older Scottish international, could handle himself, and he would just say, Keith, you cheat. When I win it, I'll give it to you.
There, yeah.
So it was brilliant for me with my pace on the counter attack, not really having to do too much defensive
How
work.
was your body during all this? Because like, you're someone who's failed the medical, has a bad back, disc issues, and then you're not necessarily treating your recovery the way you should do as well, to put it mildly. How was your body through all this?
I was knackered. I was born on the candle at both ends. When I got to Preston, I needed a double hernia operation, but we were in the middle of a relegation battle with Scunthorpe.
Yeah.
So it was really, really difficult, and I was getting painkilling injections into my arse every Saturday and Tuesday.
Fucking hell, right.
So it got to the point again.
That would make you numb pretty much.
From the hips down. It was, I couldn't feel a thing from the hips down, and it got to the point where one day, with the championship being Saturday, Tuesday, like relentless games all the time, we got to a point where there was so many pinpricks in my arse that they couldn't inject me anymore. It was like my arse was like a dartboard. Yeah. So they tried the suppositories. We started doing suppositories for a while. Didn't really have the same effect, so we had to go back to the injections. And I said it to Darren Ferguson. Everybody was aware I have a double hernia, but we're waiting till we're fit, till we're safe. I scored a goal against Scunthorpe to make us mathematically safe. Went in to see him the next day, and he said, "No, sure, we could finish 2 places above where we are now. That's an extra £1 million in the bank. So we don't care that you're in pain." Yeah. And I actually, like, it's a funny story, but it just goes to show the worrying extent that my body was. After I scored that goal against Scunthorpe, Sean St. Ledger made a mistake. He like a poor back pass. Somebody ran in and scored in like the 89th minute. It was 1-1, and we're really up against it now. I scored in the 95th minute to make it 2-1. Everybody out on the lash. I shat myself in the middle of a dance floor. Not like just fell out of me because I couldn't feel anything. And
that night after a game.
That night after the game, me hips, me waist, everything is still numb from there down. And Ledge is introducing me to women. Oh, this is Keith, he's Irish, and girls are like kissing me on the cheek, and Jesus Christ, running away from me. I had no idea that I just shat myself.
Oh my God!
But it wasn't until I went to go to Lou and I seen it sitting there in my bleeding trousers. But it's funny, but that's the extent to which my body was knackered.
How abused you were, and the way you're looking at it. Like that's. Look, you mentioned there yourself you didn't want, like that's it's a hard image to get your head around that one, to be fair.
Sorry about that.
No, just more so again, I'd say you were trying to figure out why all these girls were running away from you, you know. But
checking my breath, yeah.
But when you go back to it though, like you mentioned there, you take personal responsibility here, and you didn't want help, and despite what all these people were doing for you, at the end of the day, you need to want to help yourself. But it just shows you, like, how much of a piece of meat you are as well in the football industry. Like, that is absolutely terrifying, that like you were literally getting those sort of injections into you on a regular basis. Like, it is terrifying. It's
really not an isolated incident. I mean, at Blackburn, I had a lot of groin injuries because, you know, I'd be out on the wing and I'd be crossing 100 balls a day. And again, it doesn't sound a lot, but when you're getting around your feet and you're constantly whipping
at that intensity,
your groin will just start to go. So every now and then I get a little groin tear, and I'd miss, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe a little bit more. And it got to the point where it was happening so regularly that you were like, listen, Keith, there's a woman in Germany who will actually burn your nerve endings in your groin. And like, I was like, well, is that a good thing for me?
Yeah.
And he said, well, you won't feel any pain. I thought, but if the pain is there, it's for a reason. Yeah. And he said, well, yeah, we can burn the nerve endings and stop all that. I thought,
what age are you here? You're going back to being a teenager
Blackburn,
again.
So I would have been, in 19, 20,
Scary,
maybe even younger. But thankfully it didn't happen. You know, we just didn't do it. But it's you're just a commodity, and they will do anything they can to get you on the pitch. They really don't care about any lasting effects it may have.
Wow. With all this going on at club, you did break into the Ireland squad as well. And I was looking, the period you played in Ireland was actually a particularly special period, wasn't it? Like you played across the nations. You played your debuts against Argentina, is that correct?
Yep.
So that's not a bad place to play, playing against probably the best player of all time in your debut. It was pretty special. What are the memories from that one?
Again, like I don't remember an awful lot about the game. I remember coming on, and as I went to warm up, Giovanni told me to warm up. I was coming on, and as I went to warm up, I came in, I got me top on, and I'm standing at the side of the pitch, and an Argentina player comes and stands next to me, and I'm thinking, oh, Argentina are making a sub. took Messi off, didn't he? Just as I'm coming on.
Are you serious?
He walked past me as I was coming on. Now everybody still, you played against Messi. And I don't correct them, but I didn't. Messi came off the pitch just as I was coming on. But there was some fab, like Di Maria scored the goal. He was on.
Remember that, yeah.
I think it was Zabaleta played right back. I think I ran past him once and crossed the ball, and I got a little bit of a reaction.
Was Aguero playing?
I don't know. I don't think Aguero played, no. I'm not 100% though. Again, I don't have an awful lot of memories from the game. I think Di Maria scored and he was offside, I think was the takeaway I took from it. But my granddad's birthday was in around the time, and I walked out of the Aviva, walked straight to Ringsend into Sally O'Brien's and gave him my jersey and had a couple of points for him.
That's amazing.
And that was the highlight of the game for me. Like I couldn't talk to you about the highlights, but I could sit and say, well, my granddad was so happy and sitting in a pub with him, his grandson's an Irish international. It was brilliant, and seeing him proud made me happy rather than, having some sort of, I made a feeling.
But there's some special there as well, because all your football memories today is isolated from your family at the other side of the other side of the pond, as you call it. Whereas this was something that was in Ireland with your family there. Like, that's very special as well, isn't it?
And that, again, when people say your first ever Ireland game, it would be natural to say, oh, Messi this and Di Maria this and that. It's not. It's me granddad. That's the memory that's in my head, and it probably speaks bleeding volumes for what my thought process during games. It was all about other people rather than what am I doing here and what am I getting out of this for myself. Yeah, no, it's nice. It's great. Like I said, I'm sure they took huge value from that. Like, and everyone in the pub, I can just imagine the atmosphere there was pretty special for everybody. Going then on to the Nations Cup, if you don't mind, because it was kind of a rare thing. Like, obviously it's only ever happened once. I think was it just because the Aviva had been redeveloped, or was it just like it took off but then never really went again after that? But like, you're one of the few people who have had senior international success with Ireland, which doesn't really come around that often. It probably won't for a while, unfortunately. Yeah, well, I remember we won it. It was a tournament against Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland, and we won it. I played against all the teams except Wales. I never played against Wales. But we won the tournament, and like you say, there were some big hitters in that team. And I remember going back to the hotel after we'd won it. We got these little placards with like a 3D image of the Aviva inside it. And as we're sitting down having the last little bit of dinner before we go to bed, one of the big hitters said, "This is the only thing I've ever won with Ireland. And it's probably going to be the only thing I ever win with Ireland. I'm going on the piss." And as soon as he said that, it was just a domino effect. Everyone was going. I'm fairly sure that was a Saturday, I think, and we played Italy away in Belgium on the Tuesday. Oh, you had another game, yeah? Yeah, it was a double header. I think we played Scotland and beat them, so we won the Carling Cup of Nations, and then we had a friendly against Italy in Belgium. On the Tuesday. Against Trapattoni's home nation as well, We went out Saturday night, Sunday night. Monday, we had a few points, flew to Belgium. Training got cancelled because everybody's still all over the place. Tuesday morning, we go out onto the pitch, have a little feel of the ball. Tuesday night, play the Italians and win 2-0. It's probably the worst thing that could possibly happen to you when you're someone who's, trying to look in the mirror saying, Keith, you need to sort yourself out when the little thing is going, you've just got a cap against Italy and you've won 2-0. Yeah. Chiellini, like I played against Chiellini. Yeah. I'm thinking like, it's so easy to lie to yourself. So easy. That's incredible. Wow. But like that has to be a special memory. Like, I know, like we can get into a little bit more in a couple of minutes just on like drink has been a big part of this the whole way along the journey. But like it probably is a part of some of your better memories as well. Like you mentioned about going to the pub to see your granddad after. Like, what was it like going out and achieving success with your country? And a lot of these players, the senior pros, they're all there with you, and they're players you probably watched as a kid. Like, that must be a special memory you have looking back on it. Yeah, well, of course. I remember me the first memory I have of getting into the Irish team, when I got there, I ended up in the wrong room, and it was Duffer's room. But I didn't know that at the time, and Duffer actually walked out in the nip. He was coming out of the shower, and it's the first time I ever met him, and I was thinking like, I met him at Blackburn once or twice, but I was a little kid, a little bit nervous. But this is the first time I'd met Duffer. I wouldn't say on his level, but in the same squad type of thing. Obviously, far in the head of anything I ever did, but to be sitting in a room with Duffer, I just thought, Jesus Christ, like I'm doing all right here. Yeah. And it was just crazy. And Richard Dunn, Shea, given these boys I grew up idolising, like Duffer inside Pan. I mean, he was the one that really lit a fire under me to think I want to be a left winger. And the way he could just buy fouls off of people, I absolutely loved it. So to be in and around them lads was an absolute dream come true. But at the time, you don't take it in because you're competitive and you want to feel like you belong in the environment. You don't want to be looking at these people, idolise them. So you try to normalise it as much as you can, but there was moments when I'm looking at the likes of John O'Shea and thinking, Jesus Christ, that's John O'Shea. Like, but it was brilliant. It was crazy times, but you sort of just try and play it cool the whole time. But these are like the first session I did, I was injured and I had to go on a little run with Robbie Keane, and we're going around and introduced myself to Robbie. He said, "Where are you from, Keith?" I said, "I'm from Sherif Street." He said, "Oh, jeez, I bet they're watching me pockets." I'm like, come on, Robbie, you would relax. I said, "Where are you from?" So it's just like you build them up in your head, but then you meet them and you
They're
think,
all normal lads,
these are all just normal blokes. So that was a really good Irish team. Even Kevin Kilban, probably one of the nicest blokes in football you'll ever meet. He was the one who spoke to me first when I sat at the wrong table at dinner and got embarrassed.
And I suppose you're probably rivals for a similar position as well at the time as well. So
Killer had over 100 caps.
Yeah,
he was a left back. I don't think it was too competitive, but legend. I absolutely loved Kevin.
Yeah, that's great. After that, then, like when we look at the rest of your career, like you were this was when you were at Burnley, but after Burnley, then there was another loan spell at Sheffield Wednesday, and then it kind of in England it finished at Barnsley, and you're still very young. You're only, were you about 26, 27 when you finished England?
26 when I finished, yeah.
And like what with Barnsley, like that was your kind of last chance saloon, was it? How did you end up there? Because obviously, I think, were they in the Championship or were they League One at the time?
They were League One at the time, yeah. But again, I bit my nose off to spite my face. Again, hindsight's a great thing, but we when my contract finished at Burnley, I had 6 months to go on the contract, my agent went in to Sean Dyche, said, "Listen, what's the story with Keith?" type of thing. And he said, "Listen, we're really happy with Keith," because I wouldn't say I didn't stop drinking, but I'd learned to hide it a little bit better. I was boxing.
You were playing every game and you were winning games, and you got promotion, you said, as well.
We got promoted. Yeah. But this is 6 months out from being promoted, so we weren't sure. So basically, Dyche said, "There's a contract there for Keith, but we don't know whether it's going to be Premier League money or Championship money, so we can't offer him the deal yet. But don't worry, Keith is okay."
Fair enough.
Brilliant. I'm start training again, thinking everything's brilliant, rosy in the garden. We beat, I think we actually beat Wigan again at home in Turf Moor. So now we're mathematically we're up. That's it. We're finishing second. And the next morning, go into Dyche, what's the story? Look at Keith, the board don't want you. I was like, "Whoa." I said, "But 6 months ago, it was all, look, I spoke to the board, they're not 100% about you. What we're going to do is, if you go back to Dublin for the 2 months off, if you come back at a decent weight, I'll give you a contract and we'll move forward from there." That obviously now seems like an absolutely fine request. I thought I was going in there to get a contract. So when all I was hearing was, "You're not getting a contract," I didn't hear the trial, and I thought, no. We were due to go to Marbella the next day as like a little bit of a well done for promotion type of thing. Basically said, "Listen, F you, I won't be going to Marbella" type of thing. He pleaded with me to go, that I deserve it, da. And eventually I walked out of the room, but we went home and Ross Wallace knocked on my door that night and said, "Listen, mate, if you don't go to Marbella, my wife's not going to let me go, so please go." So I ended up going, and again, me and Dyche over there with a few drinks on us had a bit of a heart-to-heart and a bit of a hug.
Yeah.
And that was it. I decided not to come back, and I thought, having played 38 games and done well in a team that got promoted, there'd be all sorts of suitors here, Championship suitors. The only ones that really came in was Barnsley with a serious offer, so I ended up at Barnsley.
Why do you think that was? Had you got a reputation around England? Yeah,
big reputation for drinking. Yeah.
And what was the conversation then with Barnsley? They were just willing to take you on. They were willing to take a punt on you.
I think they were just happy to have a player that was probably Premiership quality, but was going to be in League One. Yeah. So I remember, like, even the way I met them was shady. Like, it really, really shouldn't have probably happened the way it happened. Again, this was on the Wednesday. The season is starting on the Saturday.
I just spent all Dublin,
pretty
summer
much
in Dublin on the
all
beard
summer
again,
in Dublin, just on the beard again. So I get this phone call saying, "Barnsley want to sign you. This is a serious one. Come back to England." So I come back. I go and meet Danny Wilson in a hotel, the Barnsley manager. He tells me, "Oh, you're the player we need, promotion this season. Use Barnsley as a stepping stone to get where you need to get." So sort of gave me a decent bit of spiel. So
because you're supposed to be going into your prime of your career here now, around 27ish, yeah.
But I had such a belly on me, I couldn't get past people anymore. I was getting heavier and heavier.
Yeah, it's not as if you're a defensive mid or a centre half where maybe you get away with that a little bit. Like when you're trying to be a pacey winger, like you probably couldn't be in a worse position.
Again, they said to me, I spoke to Danny Wilson. "Listen, can you come to the club on the Wednesday? Do a medical. We haven't spoke about signing yet. Just do a medical. And if you're happy with everything in the next couple of days, we'll get the medicals already done. You can sign. You'll even be in the squad on Saturday. Just if you fancy it, son. Just as So I'm thinking, right, I'm only going to do a medical. I'm not signing. No. So I go to Barnsley. I do the medical. Before I know it, I'm doing a bleep test. I did the bleep test, and before I know it, I'm on the bench on the Saturday. I've fucking signed and everything.
Right.
My agent's not even in the room.
Yeah, okay.
So
yeah.
it shouldn't have happened like that. But I got cornered into a room, Keith, we'll give you this. No, wait for my agent. Well, what if you put this on it? And Keith, what if we give you this as well? And you're like, before I knew it, I just said yes, and I done. But my agent should have been sitting there going, no, hold on, we'll think about this. And
what was his reaction like? Was you the same agent throughout that was looking after you? Or
I had a couple of different agents.
Is that someone in my head thinking of like where you're at and what's going on? Like maybe is the agent someone that could have been there to help you out a bit more?
Again, when I was at Blackburn, there was a fella called Michael Gray, the left back, big blondie. Blondie had a fella, got a couple of England caps, played for Sunderland as well. A bit of a legend in his own right. But me and him got really close. Him being a left back and me being a left winger, we would always be chatting. And he turned around to me one day and said, Keith, listen, I'm doing I'm going to get to the bar to be an agent. Would you like to come with me? And I thought, well, I trust you, Mickey. So that's one thing you need with your agent is a bit of trust. So I decided to leave my agent and go with Mickey. When I notified my agent that it was happening, I get to Mickey. Mickey said, I haven't actually reached the bar just yet, Keith. So my agent is going to look after you until I reach the bar.
Okay, yeah.
Mickey never reached the bar. So I ended up with this agent that I never, ever knew. And he just done me affairs, and that's where the Barnsley thing happened. So again, it was all just muddled up.
And did you have a full season at Barnsley before you decided to?
No, 6 months. I signed a 2-year deal at Barnsley, and in and around the Christmas we were playing Preston away, and my house was closer to Preston's stadium than Barnsley. So Keith,
these are all kind of rival clubs here, aren't they? Like,
I like I say, I have a daughter in England, so I didn't. I never wanted to stray too far. I always thought London would be the absolute end of me. So I never wanted to go south.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You had some sense on fairness to you, yeah.
Well, or no sense, because every club I went to, I played for a rival. So the team I played for hated me because of who I played for, and the other teams hated me because of who I was playing for. Yeah. So I couldn't win anywhere I went.
So you were at Barnsley. It was just 6 months then, and did you decide to call time and just come home then, or?
Yeah, well, I got a bit of a fright. In and around Christmas time again, we were playing Preston. I was allowed to stay in my own house, and it was actually say Christmas Eve. I remember sitting in the house, and Christmas Day we had off, so Danny Wilson lads used to have Christmas Day off. We meet at Deepdale at whatever time.
You had a game, Boxing Day.
Boxing Day. So I sat in my house Christmas Day. I had a Marks and Spencer's pizza out of the oven for me dinner, and I just started lashing whiskey, vodka, anything I get. On me Todd, and everything was getting I had a FaceTime call with the family for 30 seconds. Merry Christmas, Keith, and then before you know it, you're back in that empty house, and it's a reality again. So I'm watching Only Fields and Horses reruns. The wife is ringing me from Dublin with the kids, and you're just thinking, poor old me. Can't now I want to be a footballer. It's gone. It's out of my head now. Yeah. I can't believe this is the situation I'm in.
So you're this big house all by your own on Christmas Day.
All by myself in my big house. Poor old me. Could not get into any sort of positive way of thinking, and just start lashing the spirits out of it. And literally, I woke up the next morning with blood all over the place, face down and blood. So. Yeah, the taxi driver was banging on the door to bring me to Deepdale. Eventually woke me up. He got that much of a fright. He wanted to ring me wife.
Did he find you on the floor?
Well, I say taxi driver. He was somebody who would bring me everywhere because, like I say, I got in trouble with me driving over there. So I had Mark to bring me everywhere. Right. He came in, had a look. He was like, Keith, you can't go and play a game today, because I was due to start for Barnsley, and I went to do a couple of doggies. I got to Deepdale, had a shower, just sort of stay away from the manager type of thing, get me scrambled egg into me, and just get through the game, key type of thing. And I done the warm up, done a couple of doggies, there back, and my peripheral vision of the stadium was just coming in, and then I thought, I'm gonna fall here, I'm gonna hit the deck. And I went in, I told the manager, listen, I don't feel great, I think I might have the flu. And he basically said, oh, well, okay, so I'm going to sit on the bench or behind the bench and sit on the coach, stay away from the lads. I watched the game from behind the bench, flew back to Manchester straight after the game, never said anything to Barnsley, and never came back. So
you flew back to Manchester?
I went to Manchester and flew back to Dublin.
And what was it like? You were done with it?
That much of a fright from the blood. But again, this is going to sound very contradictory. I got that much of a fright that I needed somebody around me, like my wife or somebody, my friend, somebody that might be able to think, Jesus, Keith, like, you're in a bad way here. Because I couldn't come out and tell people what was happening. Yeah. I needed somebody to find it. So I thought, well, if I'm under my wife's nose, maybe she can help me a bit. And I think it was just my way of saying, you need to be in Dublin, Keith, because something's going to happen to you here. I got that much of a fright. But that night I flew back to Dublin and I'm back on the piss. I'm back in a public.
So hell, right, yeah.
I got that much of a fright, but I'm back on the piss.
Yeah, not enough to scare you off.
So contradictory, I understand.
I know, but that's where you're at when you're in the thick of an addiction like that. That's where you're at. With it, like, that's Jesus, it just that image of you, like the fact there's something really tragic with that. The fact you're in this big house on your own, it's Christmas Day. And like, we've all drank too much and we've woke up very hungover the next day and overdone it. But usually you're out with people and it's a social thing. Like just the fact that it's yourself on your own there is, and just everything about it is quite sad. And I think like if you look at where you went over 15 and then what's that, 12 years later, you're 26, 27, that's how it finishes is pretty fucking scary. And I think like the ignorant person would probably say, oh, look, that's just a fella who wasted his chance and didn't do enough. But when you go delve a little bit deeper of what you were sent over into and then how you were treated and like the nature of the beast that is professional football, like it's not actually too surprising that this, like I wouldn't sit there and judge for a second, because I do think that if I went over in the same shoes, there's every fucking chance I could end up in the same position, and I think a lot of other people could as well. Like it's terrifying, but also like it's just something that, like, how do you look at it when you look back? How can you put words on it? Or can you?
I don't know. I try to keep it positive for my own mental health, but again, there is the odd thought that comes in and thinks you should have done more, you had the talent to do more. Like I look at the Irish team now and think, you're 35, you should still be in and around this now. You should be one that's handing the baton over to the other younger players. But again, I do think sometimes I try and think it's black and white. Either Keith, you'd be dead, you'd drank yourself to death, because I'm realistic to know that I had a lot of years over there to try and turn it around and I couldn't. The only way I could do it was coming back and being a family man. And just
what did like, you've obviously overcome it all now. Was there a moment or a time, or was there another, like, I've heard people talk about the rock bottom? Obviously that would have sounded like one there in Barnsley, but it didn't obviously have the impact you're saying. You're back in the pub later that night. Was there a moment then where it all just came to like, right, this is, I need to get myself sorted? Like, I know you're a father, maybe was it something to do with the arrival of a child, or was there something that brought it in for you?
It was a little bit of everything. I knew I had a physical rock bottom that time, face down with the blood, the sick everywhere. That was probably my physical rock bottom. My mental rock bottom was back in Dublin, and this is probably 2 years after that.
Because you played with Drogheda for a bit, and also with Pats. But
I was out of control, absolutely out of control. And it's the one thing I always say to when Pats fans talk to me, and you played so well in that European game. I always think, like, I owe you a little bit of something here, because I was at the club for a year and a half, and basically I think people talk about 2 games I played in Europe, which is really, really poor for me. But again, I was in the height of an addiction. I was trying, but I just couldn't wrestle it out of me. And look, tough times, but it is what it is. And again, you're never done with it. Like, I'm still an alcoholic, so I still wake up in the morning, still a fresh fight. So although it'll be 7 years in November that I haven't had a drink, it's still a fresh thought. And there's so many little kicks up the arse I've had, but the mental rock bottom was just sitting in a bat, and the lies I was telling my wife, I couldn't keep tracking them anymore, and hiding my phone because I wasn't sure what was going to come true in it in terms of other women and stuff. And there was just so much shite going on that I thought, my mind just snapped. I had enough. I can't, any little, like, sitting in the bat where the thoughts could creep into my head, any quiet room, lying in bed at night without a drink, these thoughts would come in and they were killing me. So I was running away from them for years and years and years with the drink. And as soon as my wife marriage was on its arse, she was going to leave me, she basically said, listen, it's therapy or the end of the road for me and you. Went to therapy. I was drip fed for a long time. Like, we played cat and mouse, me and the therapist, and then all of a sudden I just trusted her. I started telling her absolutely everything. My wife came in and I told my wife everything in the presence of the psychiatrist, and I think it settled my wife as well, and it made me feel like, okay, my wife can deal with this and we can move on. And ever since that day, I've just felt a little bit better. And look, there's a stigma around therapy, but if anybody has anything they're dealing with mentally, to go and speak to somebody and get it off your chest, it's well worth it.
I've done it myself, and I've encouraged friends to do the same as well. Like, I think it
seems so simple, doesn't it? Just to talk about it. Like,
I've had a chat with one of my mates about it before, and he was a bit nervous, and I kind of asked the question, like, what are you afraid of? And he couldn't really answer it, and I think that was kind of then he actually went and done it, and he's doing well as a result, thank God.
I think we all have this sort of ego where we're like, oh no, that's not for me. I can do this by myself, but we all need a little bit of help at sometimes. It's a great level.
I haven't gone through it, and I'm sure, like, if it was a good therapist, which sounds like he or she really was, a lot of stuff comes back to your childhood. It's not necessarily the stuff that happened to you in your football. It's probably earlier years. Do you feel you still would have had the same issues if you had a quote unquote normal life, maybe being a tradesman living in Dublin, or maybe a personal trainer, whatever you could have done differently as opposed to the high life that is Premier League football? Or do you feel like, how do you feel there? Do you think football accelerated it, or do you think you could have
I see. I don't know. Again, I think it was a load of different ingredients that made me the footballer I was. I was quite a loner as a child. Didn't have an awful lot of friends.
Yeah.
I was mad into me football. I would just take a football with me everywhere. Like I was in Ringsend a lot of the time, so I would walk through Ringsend Park, just drop me football and play football for. If there was a net up, you wouldn't see me. I'd just be there all day, and it was an escape from me. I didn't need friends. I didn't need anybody, and it wasn't easy. But football was always an escape for me, and I think I became fixated with it then, and I'd be looking at Damien Duff and the likes, and I'd be wanting to emulate them, and making relationships with people didn't really come into me as a kid. People would want to be my friend because I was playing the school team and I'd be good at such a young age, so people would gravitate towards me. So everything I did and everything I gained as a person was because I was good at football.
Yeah.
So I just concentrated more and more and more on football, and the rewards I was getting and what the thought process I had was, if you're good enough at football, you'll get away with anything here, Keith. I mean, I got suspended from school.
Seemed to be the case, to be fair.
It really was, and I thought the key to everything is just being good enough at football.
Yeah.
Literally, I got suspended from school one day. Next day, the principal's knocking on the door asking if I can play in a game. And
that was probably a match against us, I'd
probably,
say.
and the alternative is, well, lift the suspension and Keith will play.
Yeah.
So if I'm good enough at football, I'll get away with it. And that was what was always getting reiterated to me.
Yeah.
Not a great message for a young fella.
No, look, but what, say, any parent listen to this now, or any young fella listen to this, like, because it's an incredible story here, and I really have to thank you for your honesty here. Like, anyone listen to this now is going to take massive value, and there's some serious lessons in here. But the great thing with this all is, like, it is a genuinely happy story, because you look at what you're doing now, the work you're doing now. You've gone into the media side of football as well, which is great to see, and that seems to be going from strength to strength. Like, you see you on off the ball all the time now, and then obviously you're doing the games on Virgin as well. Like, I suppose just before we get, I'd love to get like a message to maybe those parents or those kids. Like, what would you kind of say to maybe anyone who's going through any struggles, or anyone who's maybe they have a kid who's good at football and maybe could potentially go over to the UK in the future?
I would say do your homework and look up after them. Don't assume that the club is doing everything that you think they're saying they're doing, or they have their eye on your son or your daughter as much as they think you do. It's really, really difficult, to be honest. That with Brexit coming in, obviously you have to be a little bit older to go across the water now, which is probably better. I don't think people will get as many problems as I did, but just keep an eye on them. You know, I was left over there and I was happy, don't get me wrong, but I needed guidance. I know male figure in my life, I know female figure in my life, I know role model. And the role models I did start to have were drinkers coming towards the end of their career. And again, not their fault. I was attracted to that for some reason, and I ran with it. So just keep an eye on them. Keep a real good eye on them. And even at 18, young Sam Curtis has gone across the water now to Sheffield United from Pats, and Sam has everything, absolutely everything, to go on and be a Premier League player. But there's an awful lot of hurdles between here and there. People think, oh, but he has the talent, that's it, he'll do it. There's a human here that can easily be tripped up between here and there. So take a real interest in them and look up on them every day, because you can easily go down a wrong path over there.
That's brilliant, man. And like, final question for you now, like, where do you see your life from here going forward? You're in your mid-30s. I'd like to still think we're still young fellas. Going forward now, looking at the football work you're doing, is there anything else you have going on top of that? Or are you looking to kind of go all full-time on the football broadcasting side?
Yeah, well, I'd love to go full-time with the media work. I really enjoy that. I'm doing me badges. I get me A and B badges. I'm going up the north in May. I have to do an extensive thing there in May, and then go back again next year for the same thing, and I'll end up with my A badge. So yeah, like, I don't really know what the future holds, but I'm quite happy with that. I'm like rolling into every day and seeing what it brings. But the media work, really, really happy with it. The one thing I think of is, when I was young and I went to England, there was nobody to talk to from an Irish point of view. There used to be a fella called Owen Hand, who was sort of somebody to go between. The Irish manager, yeah. Yeah, so he was one that you could have a chat with, and he would sort of be the go between you and your club. Because even though you were there at 15, you don't have the social skills, or I didn't anyway, to go and flag a manager and say, here, this is wrong, I need this to happen. But if you have a friendly face that you tell him, and you have a go between, it's something like that. Even an agent maybe could do that for you, but it's really, really difficult over there. And I think the Brexit thing will be a good thing for. Obviously, the League of Ireland will get stronger and stronger, but I think for human beings going over there, I mean, my uncle David Cassidy went to Derby at 18 after his leaving cert. I went at 15, and I really do think there's a world of difference there between it's only 3 years, but it really is a world of difference.
Yeah, cool. So, final question for you: when you look at football now, all it's given you, and probably good and bad, how do you feel about it now? What's your emotion for football?
I like it. I still love it. I love the game. I mean, there's games on tonight, the Premier League, and although I've no reason to watch it in terms of work, I'll still be absolutely glued to it. I love it. The Premier League race is brilliant, and I love the game of football. The stuff that surrounds it in terms of the social media, the fans, stuff that can get into your head as a player can be really, really difficult at times. And I look at my son now, he's only 5 years of age, and he's walking around with a football in his hand. And I suppose it's only natural for my mind to wander there.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure I'd want that for him, but if that's something that puts a smile on his face, of course, I'll put a flame to it and hopefully it catches fire. And I'll encourage him all I can, but I'll never be the driving force. If he wants to do it, he can do it. If not, there's going to be absolutely no pressure on me, because sport should be fun. And so I try to tell this with every kid now, you don't take up a sport to be a professional. You take up a sport to enjoy it. And if there's a fire and you have a smile in your face and all of a sudden you're liking it, then you can go down the professional road, but take it up as an enjoyment and, a social thing, and see where it goes from there. Don't join something with the view to being a professional.
That's a brilliant point. And I think there's just something nice in that, in the sense that all you've been through and all the football has thrown at you over the years, it's great that it's still actually a genuine part of your life and hopefully your future as well. So look, Keith, thank you so much for your time today. This has been excellent.
No problem.